and the nitric oxide that is bound to a hemoglobin molecule can actually come in and, well, the hemoglobin molecule can come in and stop up one of those potentially deleterious nitric oxide molecules that's carrying an unpaired electron and drop off a nitric oxide molecule from the hemoglobin molecule that can help either repair the cell membrane or enhance the dilation of an artery.
So let's contrast that with and I don't know if it's proper to call the NitroFX a tincture, but that's how I relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when I look at it and I take it and it tastes pleasant, it's got a spearmint flavoring to it. And when that gets in the tissue that lines the mouth, the mucosal tissue that lines the mouth, whether it's under the tongue, meaning sublingual under tongue, or it's in the cheeks, it's going to be transferring directly into the bloodstream, and then what happens?
Well, then it's picked up, then the nitric oxide that's generated is picked up in the bloodstream immediately by the hemoglobin, and that basically holds on to it.
We don't have the issue of nitric oxide having a half a second to 2 second half-life being a problem because of the hemoglobin. Why is that?
That's because it stabilizes it in the same way that oxygen is carried by the hemoglobin.
Mm-hmm.
Hemoglobin being a protein molecule that has a number of different sort of receptor groups on it. And for the oxygen, it's the heme, or the iron, that carries the oxygen. And for the nitric oxide, it's the cysteine. There are cysteine molecules. Now, cysteine is another amino acid, and it's part of the protein. And these cysteine residues in the protein have thiol groups. These are sulfur groups that bind with the nitric oxide and stabilize it. So in the same way that the gas that's oxygen can travel with the hemoglobin and go from the lungs to the rest of the body, and the hemoglobin delivers the oxygen wherever it's needed, the hemoglobin also carries the nitric oxide stabilized by its binding to those cysteine groups, and it carries it to the rest of the body and drops it off where it's needed. It's a delivery system.
So if we were, instead of having enos or endothelial-derived nitric oxide, where an enzyme basically breaks down the amino acid L-arginine or L-citrulline and turning it into NO, where that you could possibly have a free radical generation at that site, by doing it in the mouth and creating the NO and having it transported by the hemoglobin, do you avoid that risk?
That's my impression. It's a very efficient carrier system because it captures all the nitric oxide that's generated, it binds it into a safe, deliverable form, and then it can be carried wherever it's needed to the rest of the body.
Okay, now in the studies that we've done on L-citrulline and L-arginine compounds, we know that it is going to be metabolized and broken down in the small intestine, and that generally at the fastest delivery rate, even if you were to do things to accelerate the process, is going to take 20 or 30 minutes for it to hit the system. How quickly does this tincture, when you put it in your mouth, start generating NO?
Well, my understanding is that it's really almost instantaneous. Very, very quick.
So when a person says, well, I took this, and I kind of held it in my mouth and swished it around so I could get it to contact all the mucosal tissue inside my cheeks and gums, and I start to feel fuzzy. I can feel something a little warm, maybe even. Are they nuts, or is it possible that they are really feeling it?
No, I think they probably are really feeling it because that nitric oxide is being picked up by the oxygen, it's being carried around, and it's doing its business in terms of enhancing vascular performance throughout the body almost immediately.
You know something? I was teasing someone the other day about a poor man's peripheral vessel testing machine, and he says, "Well, what's that?" I says, "It's your index finger and your thumb." And he says, "Well, what do you mean?" I says, "Well, take your left thumb and extend it in front of you so you can see your thumbnail. Take your index finger on your right hand and your thumb on your right hand and squeeze your fingernail or thumbnail on your left hand, and then let go, and see how long it takes for your fingernail, which when you squeeze it, it'll push the blood out of those capillaries, how long it takes for the blood to refill." So in other words, as you know, in the trades, a capillary refill test.
Exactly. And we do that all the time to see how good people's peripheral vasculature is.
Well, one of the things that was kind of fun was I've had people experiment where that they'll do this before they start taking the nitro effects, and they'll squeeze the blood out of it, and they'll see the fingernail, the tissue underneath it turn white, and then they'll watch the blood refill it and turn it pink again. And then we have them take the nitro effects, and then within a matter of minutes, do it again. And it's shocking, Claire. It's really fun to watch them do that little test. Well, let me jump on another topic here, because I know that you had prepared, and I want to make sure that everybody gets benefit of what you had to say. If you would, Claire, I know that you had a note here for me. If you were to say on number 3, what's the big deal about nitric oxide? I know that you've got some notes here, and I want to go ahead and just get these out real quick. Would you go ahead and just read what you had prepared here?
Well, there's a reason that the people who first discovered nitric oxide won the Nobel Prize for that discovery, and that's because this is a really, really important molecule in the human body. We now know that nitric oxide plays a very, very important role in supporting the immune system, in fighting inflammation, in reducing oxidative stress in the body, that nitric oxide plays an important role in supporting brain function, supporting sexual health, and aiding in gastrointestinal functioning. And perhaps, to my mind, the most important, if you had to pick one function that really is a standout among all these very, very important effects, is the role that nitric oxide has in the cardiovascular system, because of its multiple effects on endothelial function, vascular pliability, reducing blood pressure, even improving contractility of the heart, and improving perfusion of virtually every organ system in the body. So if I had to pick the number one function that I would want people to really understand and be able to discuss, I think the effects on the cardiovascular system would be the very top one, because it influences so many different organ systems in the body.
Now, Claire, I could absolutely, and we've done this before, do marathon conference calls where we're on the air for an hour. We don't have that kind of time tonight, so what I want to do is thank you, number one, for your time tonight, and number two, invite you back again. Would your schedule permit you to be here a week from tonight at the same time?
Absolutely. Be my great pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, so if we were to talk next week, would it be okay if we had some of the people listening tonight that said, gosh, they didn't talk about this and they didn't talk about that, to send an email, and possibly we could handpick some of the ones that might be asked more frequently than the others and address some of those questions?
That'd be great. I'd love that.
Okay, so before we go, anyone that would like to fire a question to us and have Claire look it up, understanding that Claire is an individual with the vast resources of Johns Hopkins, the vast resources of the National Institutes of Health at her fingertips. She can research just about anything, and trust me, she knows how to do it. Send an email to me, dan@zeroplaque.com, dan@zeroplaque.com, in the subject line, questions